Good morning. Welcome at ChangeNOW 2024. So today we're going to talk about how we can solve water scarcity through innovation and adaptation. So I'm Olivier Raybaud, Managing Director at SWEN's Blue Ocean Fund dedicated to innovation for ocean health, and I will be your moderator today. So water scarcity is often considered as one of the effects of climate change, and it is, but not only. It is also due to the fact that we are a growing population. It's also due to the fact that we are using more water, and we are also polluting fresh water, so we reduce the availability of water. So to go through that topic, we will be receiving today some great speakers. Scientists, hydrologists, will be receiving also some CEO of large corporates that are suffering from water scarcity. We'll be also receiving some startups that are bringing some innovation, and we'll also be receiving some investors that help invest in those solutions. So to start, we're going to first hear a keynote speech from Kelsey, Leonard. So please, Kelsey, come on stage. And Kelsey, Leonard, Dr. Kelsey, Leonard. So I didn't think about the jingle. But Kelsey Leonard holds a research chair in indigenous waters, climate, and sustainability at the University of Waterloo. And I will leave you and make your keynote speech. Thank you, Kelsey.
So much. Welcome, everyone. I think we're waiting for some slides. Let's see. Oh. There we are. Akwe Wanikasek. Hello, good day, everyone. My name is Dr. Kelsey Leonard, and I introduced myself in my Shinnecock language. For those of you, and I think as a human species, we're a little challenged with geography. So if you are unfamiliar with my nation, we are located on the east end of what's currently known as Long Island, New York. What you see here pictured in the map is the eastern portion of the island. It's called Long Island for a reason. It's pretty long. But these are our ancestral territories and where we still remain. We're very fortunate as an indigenous nation to have never been removed from our ancestral homelands. However, they have been severely diminished due to colonization. But you may be asking yourselves, as many people ask me, why did you become a water scientist? Well, Shinnecock in our language means people of the stony shore. And I think my ancestors had a really good fortuitous idea of what it means to be a good human being in the part of the world that I'm from. It means to protect the shore. It means to protect water. And that's what we do as a coastal First Nation located along the Atlantic shores. So today, though, I want to share with you a solution to our pressing climate crisis. But before we can understand the climate crisis, we have to acknowledge that the climate crisis is a human crisis. This myth of scarcity being solely driven by the natural world removes our responsibility and culpability as a human species in the choices that we make every day that damage our planet. So what that calls for is a reform of our relationship to nature and the natural world and our planet. I love the work, as you're seeing here on the screen, of Anishinaabe scholar Dr. Robin Wall-Kimmerer, who in her book, Braiding Sweetgrass, says, knowing that you love the earth changes you. It activates you to defend and protect and celebrate. But when you feel that the earth loves you in return, that feeling transforms the relationship from a one-way street to a sacred bond. And ultimately, that is what we are trying to restore. We are trying to restore our connection to nature. Because unfortunately, for so many of us among humanity and human society, we have become disconnected from nature, from our environment, and from water. How many of you in this room have a child that was born this year? Raise your hand. Okay, we've had a few. A grandchild? A few. A niece, a nephew? A few. A friend who had a baby this year? Okay, there we go, everybody in the room. See, if we don't act now, under current climate projections, children born this year, in their lifetime, will see cities like New York and Miami underwater. We are seeing increasing tornadoes, droughts, wildfires. For the first time in my lifetime, in my home this past summer on Long Island, we were surrounded by a cloud of orange smoke from wildfires originating out of northern Canada. We are in crisis. So maybe this idea of the climate crisis and sea level rise still hasn't persuaded you. Well, what's wrong with our current status quo, keeping everything as it is? According to the World Wildlife Fund in 2020, we have seen a loss of nearly 2/3 of the world's biodiversity. And pertinent to today's topic, the most dramatic decline of that biodiversity has been in freshwater ecosystems. What we are seeing in our society today are laws that legalize the destruction of nature. See, we need a legal reform in such a manner that we start to diminish this idea of human superiority over nature and recognize that we need to become good stewards again. So that calls for change. It calls for thinking about innovation and solutions and reimagining what a legal ethic could look like that allows for this type of fundamental shift. So here's what that could look like. A new generation of earth lawyers fighting for the rights of nature. You may be asking yourself, what's an earth lawyer? Well, a recent textbook published in 2020 on the topic of earth law says that earth law is often sometimes called ecocentric law. You might have heard it called eco-jurisprudence. It's an emerging body of law for protecting, restoring, and stabilizing the functional interdependency of Earth's life and life support systems. Sounds pretty good to me. So when I talk to people about earth law, I often say it is like a tree. There's current branches on it, there will be branches that will fall off, and there will be new branches that will grow, probably from some of you in this room, thinking of new innovative legal ideas. But for right now, we have branches like rights of nature, the crime of ecocide, animal rights, rights of future generations, indigenous law, human environmental rights like the human right to water, atmospheric trust litigation, guardianship of nature, and so many more that don't fit on the slide. Ultimately, we are at a precipice, a time for change, a time when we can imagine something different in the way our legal systems operate, because so far, they're not doing what we need them to do to protect the planet. So it begs a question. Who is justice for? Humanity alone? Well, we kind of already have a precedent for this transformation. We recognize the legal personality of corporations, some of the ones on the screen here. So why not the Great Lakes? Why not the Mississippi River? Why not the River Seine? Why not the many waterways around our planet that we all depend upon to live healthy lives? So, the question then becomes, what are each of you going to do about it? What are you going to do for those children that were born this year? Well, I hope you might consider becoming a part of a global movement where we've seen the rights of rivers recognized in Aotearoa, New Zealand with the Whanganui River, where we've seen rivers recognized all around the world through, and also other forms of natural entities, through constitutional amendments, court decisions, local ordinances, indigenous law. And so, excuse me, you might see this in terms of Ecuador, who did a constitutional amendment. You might also have your local city or township pass a resolution. You might appeal directly to justices through amicus briefs, or you might create your own replicable models like the Declaration of Rights of Rivers. So in Canada, where I'm based currently, we had our first river recognized in 2021. It was the Magpie River, a joint initiative by the Innu First Nation, largely led by youth and female-identifying youth, and it was in conjunction with local Quebecois municipalities. So it was a co-governance arrangement and really showed how we have to build these solutions collaboratively across communities. So under the Universal Declaration of River Rights that was put forward, there are these ideas of how do we actually go about protecting water? Well, our status quo has led it so that rivers are over-diverted, that they only protect navigable waters in many parts of the world. Look up that definition. It's a lot of legalese embedded in there. They're often prone to destructive dams, and they often are seen as property. Rivers are seen as property. And so this reform, this transformation, is really trying to dismantle this idea of the natural world being property that can be owned and therefore degraded by humanity. So when we think of rights of rivers, we say that rivers have a right to flow. We say that it should ensure the health of the entire watershed, really having a holistic approach. We say that dams are discouraged or prohibited. And we also say that rivers are persons in the sense that they have standing to be heard in a court of law. Just like a corporation, it's not that hard. And we're seeing successes all around the world happening every day. Just last week, colleagues who I work with at the Earth Law Center and international rivers associations around the world, as well as local indigenous river guardians, saw the first legal recognition of a river in Peru. Thank you. I often get the question, well, who gets to speak for the river? And it needs to be localized and context-specific. But this case out of Peru shows it's possible and shows what it looks like to do that with attention to cultural authenticity and to indigenous rights and to the landscape and or waterscape of the country and the unique background that it may have. See, in this case, indigenous rights were restored and upheld, and indigenous river guardians who fought to have the river protected now also get to be its voice. So we don't have enough time today for me to tell you all of the thousands of initiatives around the world that are working to protect our planet through the recognition of rights of nature, of rights of future generations, of right to a healthy environment. So my colleagues and I tried to make it a little bit easy for you. We created something called the Eco-Jurisprudence Monitor. You can scan the QR code here, and you can search for these initiatives by your political affiliation, maybe country. So you could look for things that are based out of Europe, based out of France, based out of the United States, based out of Peru. But we also made it so that you can look through an ecological lens. You can identify all of the oceans that have been protected, the mountains, the rivers, the lakes. And so it's a really unique tool to build your foundational knowledge, because ultimately, if we're creating a new generation of Earth lawyers and Earth citizens, we need to do a little bit of heart work to learn. So this is what the monitor looks like, in case you're curious. Then, I also want to leave you with other tools. As I mentioned earlier, Earth Law Center, one of the key pivotal actors in that rights of river recognition in Peru, has established what is called the Earth Law Portal. You can also scan this here. It's kind of like Legal Zoom for the planet. You get to go here, and there are downloadable templates for different jurisdictions and different uses. And really, we've done a lot of the work for you. But we also hope that you will customize it and make it localized and specific to your home community and what works for you. All of what I've shared with you today is a part of a global movement. There are global change makers, just like some of the change makers here today, who are making this a reality. From pioneers to the Global Alliance for the Rights of Nature, to Indigenous Environmental Network, to movement rights. And you can also see a timeline of much of this work through the UN Harmony with Nature program. And if you want to support this work and learn more about this work, excuse me, you can follow up with the Earth Law Center by going to this QR code. Because ultimately, when I'm thinking about what I see here over the course of the next few days, a lot of talk about economic redistribution, about financialization, about the way in which our economies interact with nature. And what I believe also needs to happen in terms of this transformative shift in the legal system is a redistribution of wealth to grassroots organizations who are actually doing this work, to be able to invest in the planet. So you can learn more about that here at Earth Law Center. Ultimately, what I want to leave you with today: clean water, the desire for clean water, blockading, protesting, putting bodies on the line for clean water is not terrorism. Poisoning the water of indigenous peoples, the water of local communities, that is an act of terrorism. Every human being and non-human being on this planet that depends on water and the water itself deserves to be healthy. See, healthy water is healthy planet, is healthy people. And ultimately, if we're going to restore that relationship, that connection to nature, we need to operate from an ethic of love. And that means throwing out the myth of objectivity. It means scientists actually embracing emotional stature and leading with love. Ultimately, Earth Law is about recognizing, honoring, and protecting nature's inherent right to exist, thrive, and evolve. And hopefully together, that means that we can build a future in which humans and nature flourish. Tabutni, thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Kelsey.
Thank you so much.
So we are talking about system change, giving legal personhood to rivers and bodies of water. And I think that's really something which shows what ChangeNOW is working on. And our next panel is going to be about hearing from Charlène Descollonges, hydrologist, and Sébastien Bazin, the CEO of the group Accor. So I invite Charlène and Sébastien on stage. Welcome. Please sit down. Thank you for being here at ChangeNOW. So we just heard Dr. Kelsey Leonard talking about the need to give legal personhood to rivers, to protect them. And with you, we're going to talk about how you see that, how you see the impact of water scarcity and how you can adapt to that. So maybe we're going to start with Sébastien. Sébastien, you're the CEO of Group Accor. Could you please describe quickly what Group Accor does?
We happen to be a hotel company. Accor is the largest hotel company outside of America, so it's 6,000 hotels, 320,000 people, 120 countries, and doing just fine. Actually, not doing great. So it's a big company in which we probably the one thing I'm the most proud about is we employ every year 100,000 new people, of which 2/3 of those people never went to university, never had a job before. So we train 100,000 people every year, and we and then they leave after 3 years because they have a better self-esteem, better control of their life, and we do it again. And we do it in South America, in Nigeria, in Southeast Asia, in all over the globe. And it's kind of a miracle. And again, I think we have joy doing it. That's who we are.
Thank you. And Charlène, could you share with us why you've decided to become a hydrologist?
Yes. Well, when I was a child, I used to follow my grandbrother. He's a fly fisher, so we spent many hours feet into the water and tracking any possible trouts. And my family and I had a chance to grow up close to rivers, so I was wondering how do they work, do they suffer from activities, and how to protect them. So I studied geology, and here I had a choice: petrol extraction, metal or mineral extraction, or water extraction. Well, I chose the worst, and I studied hydrology. Hydrology is the study of surface water, rivers, lakes, wetlands, etc. And I aim to protect them. Then, at the beginning of my career, I worked as an official engineer and figured out that water is a political stake. So since then, I work on translating the complexity of water issues and water scarcity, and especially the importance of hydro systems to stakeholders. And my goal is helping a better understanding of water issues and especially water scarcity in order to choose the best solutions.
Thank you. And we heard that we're working on legal personhood for rivers. And if they could talk as well, what would they complain about?
Many things. They're sick of our human activities, sick of water scarcity too. There are two main reasons for water scarcity: a lack of rainwater, which is the offer, and exceeding water demand. And with the climate change, we used to focus on the offer, but we didn't talk about rivers and the resource that we have. Actually, we are experiencing the crisis of both, including unsustainable growing demand. Don't you know about the water footprint of humanity in a year? Yes.
I watch your videos, so I know.
Oh. Well, for the others, according to a study, it's about 24,000 billion cubic meters in a year. Who can conceive such a volume? Imagine we gather all the rivers in the world and we turn away half of the annual discharge. This volume, this amount of water, is the water footprint of humanity in a year. It's all the water you need for producing our energy, clothing, food, medicines, electronics, even this smartphone, 12,000 liters for producing this smartphone. So everything needs water, and we forget about this. While the human population grew by 4.7 times, the water demand grew by 8 times over the past 120 years. And the main use of water is agriculture, irrigation. In fact, the more our food comes from animals, the higher the water footprint. Agriculture appropriates the green water, which is the water contained in the soil and used by plants to grow. And when the green water isn't enough, we pump blue water from groundwater, rivers, lakes, because we eat twice as much meat over the past 60 years. We need 3 times more blue water for cereal irrigation. And then you add industrial uses, energy, tourism, domestic uses, and the overall living species who also rely on this blue water. And so here comes the competition and the water scarcity.
Maybe if you could, in few words, explain blue water compared to green water?
Yes, sure. Green water, as I said, is the water contained in the soil, which is evaporated from plants. And the blue water is contained in the groundwater, rivers, lakes, and stuff. So we pump it for everything, for industrial, energy, etc. And then you have the gray water, which is the pollution that industrials and domestic uses throw into the river. And the polluted water cannot be available for other uses. So the water scarcity gets worse. And then we have the offer crisis due to climate change. So climate change will affect the water cycle everywhere worldwide, and it would cause decreased precipitation and more precipitation in other regions. Everywhere, warmer temperatures lead to increasing evaporating demand. And so there is a lack of water in the soil, and so the water cannot go deeper in the groundwater reservoirs. For each greenhouse gas emissions, there is more droughts and more floods. So warmer is our planet, more extreme hydrological events happen. In one hand, we have longer drier spells with more intense, and on the other hand, we have extreme precipitation, so more runoff, so more higher risk of floods. So finally, where water demand is already high with a high water footprint, mostly in developed countries, the more we have water stress, so water scarcity.
Thank you. So, Sébastien, could you share maybe how water scarcity affects the activities of Group Accor?
Sure. Charlène is not going to like me too much. Accor, I told you, we have almost 6,000 hotels. We consume 105 million cubic meters. There's 2 or 3 things which I didn't know before I came over here. 80% of the hotels of Accor in the world are in a water-stressed environment. 80. The other thing which I didn't know about, I knew like 6 months ago, which is a scary number. An occupied room at Accor, we consume 500 liters per day. That compares to a French inhabitant is 1/3, is 150 liters a day. But when you go to Southeast Asia, when you go to South America, what we consume in one hotel room is 8 times the consumption of a local inhabitant. And then you have to go and dive further on understanding what could I do about it. Then you realize that 40% of what I consume in water is something I have direct control over, which is toilets, shower, bath, tap water. But 60%, I don't really control it. That's food and beverage, that anything which is, as you said, agriculture-driven, goods and services. So basically what you have to do when you are in my position is first you have to understand the metrics. What are you trying to achieve? 2, I've been told a long time ago, a number which I've never forgotten, is 1/3 of the global population does not have access to drinkable water. Then when I'm developing and opening one new hotel almost per day in the world, I'm taking something away from people who actually need it the most, which is water, which is energy, and of course, doing a lot of carbon emission. So you need a plan, you need a methodology, you need to act, you need to deploy, and you need to report. Then what you have today is so-called CSRD, which is really an obligation on many companies to put a list on what are the things you want to resolve. And you have to put a priority list. Charlène, you're going to be happy. We decided that the first and the biggest item to resolve is water. The second is carbon. And then you have to basically get everybody to back you up, because alone I'm not going to be able to do it. So first we've put a water plan together like a year ago, 2023, with all the organization in France. My peers, my competitors, professional organization, by saying we need to reduce water. It's only 10%, but 10% by 2030. And then we went to all the global guys, Marriott, Hilton, Hyatt, Jong, all the big guys. We said we need to share best practices when it comes to sustainability, because this is not competition, and whatever they do better at Marriott in America, whatever I do better in Sub-Saharan Africa, should be open source. That's called the Global Sustainability Alliance. And then we dived even a bit more granular by saying we need to be even more responsible on putting an alliances together on sustainable procurement. And then we decided to basically join the CEO mandate on water. So what I'm trying to tell you is there's 2 or 3 things you could do. 1, put the right tools, the right system. Try to look at all the leaks, trying to get all the low-flow plumbing equipment. And there's a lot of boost here We actually provide you with a lot of new system when you can probably save 40% of water when you take a shower. Then you need to eliminate all the baths. And some clients complain about it. The same one who wants to basically preserve water, he wants a bath. Well, you say, no, it's going to be shower, walk-in shower. It's actually 40% less consumption of water from a bath to a shower. And then what's the most interesting thing, which I did not know again, and back to Charlène, what you talked about, is on the food and beverage, you're probably listening to me here, it's very interesting. A lot of people, when you go to a Novotel, Mercure, or any hotels of the world, you're pretty happy to have a buffet for breakfast. You have basically the ability to choose, and you have a number of items, and it's freestanding. We are going away from buffet. We are going away from beef sausages. It sounds anecdotic, it's not. A beef, as you know, per kilo is 15,000 liters of water. A pork is 1/3, 5,000. A chicken, 4,000. A salad, 400. So if you start to think, what am I going to be offering, and no longer in a buffet, but it's going to be served, you're going to have to be ordered, then you can basically extinguish probably more than 50% of what you serve, as long as you explain to people why you're doing it, because of course they still want the beef sausage. Raffles Hotel, we went from 150 kilos to 10 kilos in 1 year. Of course, people realized it. Then you have to go and basically tell your guests, can we please not do your room every day? Everybody at your house, do you really clean your room every day? Maybe some of you do, but hopefully you're going to do it once a week. But every day, it's not necessary. If you can skip the cleaning and offer that to the guest and do it every 3rd days, then you basically save 20% of water. So it's kind of actually what do you do in terms of plumbing, what are you doing in terms of food concept, what are you doing for changing habits for the guest, and then open source with the big guys, and you might get there. My problems is the new hotel development. Is when you go and open a hotel in Southeast Asia, Indonesia, Malaysia, and I told you in South America, I know I'm having a footprint. I'm taking something away. So I'm putting a list on the negative column, how much water, how much energy, how much footprint am I impacting the local community? And then I have the plus column on, can I please contribute on local employment, on basically training, on local procurement, on craftsmanship, on local economy. And then if the column on the positive column is positive, then you sit down with the mayor and local community and you decide to act or not to act. But any new hotel we open has an impact on the planet. And it's a bit schizophrenic for me, because I'm in charge of developing this group, and I know by doing it, I'm taking basically resources away from people who need it. And this is the way we act.
So thank you, Sébastien, for sharing. And so...
Yeah, those are Accor people, so...
So Charlène, we heard about some solutions, such as reducing some type of foods, about changing the habits of the users, about maintenance. Through science, do you see any other solutions that you would like to promote?
There are so many solutions we have, and thank you, Sébastien, for sharing those. The science is progressing with a better understanding of green water and the green water and the water footprint in general. So one of the panel solutions are changing our food, obviously, but technology can help too. But it shouldn't be the only panel of solutions. In fact, the best technologies we have are nature-based solutions. And scientists plead for their massive deployment because wetlands, rivers, trees, living soil, they can regulate extreme droughts, extreme floods, and they can treat water. They are more powerful for carbon storage than ever. And by the way, they host a rich biodiversity. So no one human technology can be useful and efficient as a wetland, for example. So part of the solution is mostly saving them and avoiding construction of roads, buildings, etc. As simple as that, just let it be. And the other panel of solution is about resilience. We should work on the capacity of a society, of a company, to recover from droughts or floods. And as I said, everyone will be affected by these water issues due to climate change. So we need to work on this, on the resilience. For example, in the south of France, some mayors refused the construction of houses because of lasting droughts and cut of water during summer. So here we have reached the physical limits of hydro systems. So they cannot accept any additional demand. And here we are. There is nothing left to do. They must just reduce their water demand.
Thank you. And so we just heard about nature-based solutions. Do we, Group Accor, collaborate with scientists to put in place also nature-based solutions?
Yeah, it's kind of a must. I was telling Charlène that I guess we haven't really met before. I'm very sincere. We made a commitment to be net zero in carbon by 2050 and to be minus 50% by 2030. Do I know we're going to get there? No. Do I believe I'm going to fail? Yes. So water, we probably should be reducing water by half in the next 20 years. Do I know how to do it? No. Do I need help? Yes. So all those boosts behind, I'm sure technology will exist, may not be adaptable. My biggest problem is in one hotel, Ibis Hotel in Sao Paulo, Ibis Hotel in whatever, Riyadh, Ibis Hotel in Paris, Ibis Hotel in Bangalore, even though it's kind of the same brand, it doesn't have the same emission. Has a lot to do with what type of energy are you using. It's the same thing for water. If you believe you have the same water problem between the north of France and south of France, even within the same city, you may have a different solution. So I'm one of those people where I know the commitment. The one thing which gets me going is many of you here, if you're below 35 years old, you're going to have 4 criteria for choosing a hotel tomorrow morning. 1, price, 1, location, 3, brand, 4, which may be coming first. What are the values of that brand? What does it do to change the planet? How eco-certified are they? I.e., if I don't get my act together, my brands would not be chosen. And I'll give you just the last example because that happened to me last year. I was in Greece, I was in Athens, and I was meeting with a very big, rich investor developer. And we signed a contract with him a couple of years ago, and he showed me a big book on basically building Raffles Fairmont 400 rooms in Mykonos. And we signed that contract 2 years ago. And he was showing me all the different drawings, design. He was between dense, very nice. But then I realized there was 220 swimming pools on different villas. And I started to be pretty grumpy. And I said to the man, I'm so sorry, sir. Can we please go to Mykonos? He wondered why. I said, I need to walk the site. The same afternoon we went to Mykonos. I went on the site. That was absolutely gorgeous. Virgin, rocky, little creek, water creek. It was just impeccable, probably like this for 2,000 years. So I told the guy, I feel super uncomfortable. Can I please meet with the mayor? So I went to see the mayor the next morning and I said, sir, this is what we've signed 2 years ago. I walked the site yesterday. Can I please ask and seek your advice? And the guy said to me, you are the first person I'm meeting from Accor. I said, what? He said, no, I've never met anybody. And if you want to know my answer, I am deadly against it. And that was authorized by whatever, the government in Athens. We, of course, canceled the contract. So what I'm only telling you is if you have the right discipline, the right rigor, there's a lot of mistakes you should be avoiding. In terms of solution, I'm counting on the guy in my back to provide to me because I am in search of many, many different brains and scientifics because measuring is one thing. Acting is very different. And I'm here to act, not to think.
Thank you. And Charlène, if you have one sentence to conclude.
It's care about the water footprint, eat less water by changing our food, and reconnect people to their hydro systems. the more you can learn about it, the more you can protect them. So this is my message, just care about your hydro systems.
Thank you very much, both of you. Big round of applause. Thank you. And I think that's been very interesting to hear directly from Sébastien Bazin what are the challenges at the level of Groupe Accor, because those are real challenges and it's not that easy to overcome. And we're going to go for the next panel, and I'm going to invite our next panelists, which are so Monica Altamirano de Jong from WaterEquity, Alain-Olivier Desbois from Oneka, and Daniel Zimmer from Climate KYC. Please take a seat. So thank you very much for being here, the three of you. So we start with you, Monica. Could you present in a few words WaterEquity?
Yes, sure. So WaterEquity, we are the first asset manager created with an exclusive focus on SDG 6, so universal access to water and sanitation. We spun out of water.org, NGO that has worked the last 30 years to enhance and expand the access of the most vulnerable communities to this service. And traditionally, since 6 years ago that we were created to leverage the power of capital markets and to scale private sector investments into this very underfunded sector, we have raised 436 million in capital, and through financial institutions, we have disbursed it in 16 countries across Asia, Latin America, and Africa, reaching more than 5 million people, most of them living in very vulnerable conditions. And we have also impacted through that, a majority of the people impacted through that are women, above 93%. But now we have seen, as Kelsey was just explaining, the climate crisis is a water crisis, and therefore is impacting even those people who we already managed to connect, right? And in that way, for that reason, we have expanded and rethought our impact framework to expand from a focus on access to water and sanitation to include mitigating water scarcity and impacting water quality of freshwater ecosystems. And that's where we're kind of expanding into these investments in growth companies and projects that will deliver a resilient and reliable service to all those communities. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we're going to our next speaker. Alain-Olivier, could you describe what is Oneka Waters?
Certainly. So Oneka Technology is a Canadian impact-driven based company that offers an all-in-one solution for sustainable wave-powered desalination solution. So we're basically addressing the water scarcity issue. Our technology consists of buoys that are set in arrays of buoys that are standing near shore, taking the wave action to pressurize the water into reverse osmosis membrane. And then the desalinated water is pumped back to the shore. So we bring a lot of different advantages. So it's zero emissions, it's zero energy use, zero land use as well. And also we can also benefits, it's low maintenance, it's very scalable, and it's something that is also has the benefits to regenerate the oceans through different elements of artificial reefs and marine protected areas. So we have a couple of devices that covers the range of water demand. We have our smallest unit called Ice Cube, which produces 1,000 liters per day, and it's suited for disaster relief applications. And we have our two biggest units, Iceberg and Glacier, which are basically producing 50,000 liters and 500,000 liters per day, addressing the water scarcity for bigger companies like mining companies or coastal communities. So we bring this solution to clients that are coastal, communities, mining companies, and also resorts like the group Accor, which are basically, as we said, as you just heard, are also experiencing water scarcity. So we're based in Canada, but we're blessed with water in Canada. We're addressing water scarcity around the world, currently in Chile, in California, and also in the Caribbean. But we've been called by all the world, to bring our solutions. So this is where we are today at the commercialization stage of our technology.
Thank you very much, Alain-Olivier. And Daniel, your turn now to present Climate KYC.
Thank you, and good morning, everyone. So Climate KIC, generally we say Climate KIC, but it's true that it should be KIC because KIC is a knowledge and innovation community, and we are in charge of mobilizing a large partnership of actors across Europe and globally more and more, dealing with climate change and trying to innovate in order to find solutions to climate change. So we are basically working on 3 different things. We support a lot of startups. We have been supported in a bit more than 10 years, 2,000 startups in Europe and globally more and more again that work on addressing climate change. We are training innovators, and we are developing a number of programs that aim to address climate change in the most systemic and holistic way. Just to give you one example, we are working with the government of Ireland to transform completely the agri-food sector of Ireland. So you see, I'm not working only on water, I'm working on all types of land use issues. But I'm also here today because I've been for 10 years leading the World Water Council, so I have gained also quite a global experience on water issues.
Thank you, Daniel. Monica, I'm going to start the first question for you. What type of solutions to water scarcity do WaterEquity invest in?
Thank you. That's a great question, and I think before I start mentioning some of them, it's important to say that we have to always look at these solutions in their context. So, and to see their impact, we need to see the local hydrological conditions, but also the local needs and capacities of public and private sector. But with that said, so we are looking at very promising solutions at 2 sides, right? The demand management, like the reduction on non-revenue water, and for those who are not in the water sector, that's basically water we take from the freshwater sources, groundwater or surface water, and then we pump through our system. We spend energy doing that, but we lose it, right? And that can be as much as 70% in some cities in Nigeria, up to maybe in the Netherlands we have 6%. So there is a lot to be won there, right? And that's a very good way to also improve the finances of those utilities, because they're losing energy right? Spending on energy and also water for basically non-productive use. The other option that we see along non-revenue water and smart water companies that help utilities do that are also smart water companies that are providing solutions to users like buildings. We used to have, even in the Netherlands recently, we would have like one connection and everybody in that building pays the same. But that was making, for example, in countries like India, that people are basically paying the same but using an enormous amount of water, and then therefore at the end they lose the service, right? So you have very innovative companies coming there also and saying you will have an alarm basically for if your toilet is flushing more than regular and so forth, and making that everybody pays for the use. So that's changing behavior also, right? And the consumption. The third on that way also is like simply more water-efficient technologies, which could be at house level, like there are those taps, right, that make you use much less water to wash your hands, but also an industrial level. Now, on the supply side, we basically looking all kind of alternative sources of water than to make that demand on our freshwater resources. And so there, the first one is wastewater reuse, right? There is a lot of excitement because that's the application of the circular economy in the water sector. They make us also look at new business models because you're not just reusing water, you're also able to produce energy and take the nutrients for the food sector. But that said, it requires a lot of changes in our value chains, right? The second part is rainwater. The second option also there is rainwater harvesting. Many countries are turning to that because it's quite it's also a solution buildings, industries are willing to pay for because you basically won't spend that money in that water that you buy in those dry months. And can reuse it, but also recover aquifers with that. And the last one, but it's also very important, is desalination. And that we see more important maybe for the centralized systems in remote areas. And the good news is, as you will hear much more from Oneka Technologies, is that we have them now more and more powered by renewable sources, solar or wave and so forth. So, but like I said, it's really looking, we're trying to look at the whole watershed and what's there of the highest potential. Thank you.
Thank you. And Alain-Olivier, so Monica just listed desalination as the last possibility, last resort. Could you explain why, so far, desalinated water is something that people don't like that much?
Yeah, it's a good question. And this is where, when we compare ourselves to conventional desalination, which is basically turning fuel into water, this is one of the big issues. It's basically the energy intensity that effectively has to convert that. So when you think about this, converting fuel into water, it doesn't make sense. You just create even more CO2 emissions, and you just exacerbate climate change and water scarcity. So to one end, this is one of the big elements. So our solution doesn't emit any CO2 emissions. It's fully renewable, and we don't need energy. We don't need, we just take the waves, basically, to power the system and desalinate the water fully. So we're getting rid of that big component, which is basically responsible for 50 or 60% of the cost of desalinated water. So this is what population and communities and industries are now doing, converting to conventional desal, because our solution is just becoming to the marketplace. So when you think today, 1% of desalination is meeting the demand of water, which is a big element, but it contributes to 0.5% of the CO2 emission. So we can continue that way. If you project this industry with a growth of 10 to 12% per annum, this industry will emit twice the amount of CO2 than the aviation industry in 2050. So it doesn't make sense. So if we want to decarbonize our economy, we need to think totally different. So there's an alternative like solar and wind-powered desalination plants, which basically address that problem of CO2 emissions, but you're still left with infrastructure. You need the electrical component, equipments, and also the land footprint. The other big issue with conventional desal, which is another element that restrict people from adopting it, is the pollution. So the brine discharge in the marine ecosystem. So again, solar desal and wind desal doesn't prevent that as well, but we can, because our solution is designed in the way that our buoys are basically standing near shore, about 1 or 2 kilometers away from the shore. So our brine is much more responsible. So when you look at conventional desalination, 100 to 150% more saltier water is rejected in the ocean, which is basically impact ecosystems. Our brine is more like 30 to 50%. But the fact that we're offshore and many outfalls with different buoys, we cannot detect the difference in salinity 2 meters away from the buoy. So we're now measuring these impacts to make sure that from our baseline and our performance, we can claim these elements, that is performance. And I guess these are the two main elements that we differentiate ourselves. But beyond that, because our system could also is actually could with our anchors at the bottom of the sea. So our buoys are anchored with at the bottom of the sea with anchors. They can act as artificial reefs, and the arrays of our buoys can now become part of a concept of marine protected area. So we now can think of working with communities in having these biodiversity protection And even to the point of our device, are standing there for 15, 20 years, is a powerful tool to collect data. And one of the big gaps that exists in this ecosystem of better understanding the relationship between water and ocean is the data gap. So then we can enable all these elements and really differentiate ourselves between conventional desal, and so we just need to communicate what we're doing. I guess this is the point of being able to have the measure, the impacts, and the communication skills, and the system change approach we're going to come back to really leverage our solution in the marketplace.
Thank you very much. Daniel? Please. Daniel, we heard a number of solutions. So Monica shared a number of solutions on all sides of the supply chain. We had Charlène also mentioning the nature-based solutions. So you wrote a book on water. Could you share your views on what are the solutions that make sense and what are the solutions that could be explored further?
Thank you. I just finished a book where I've been thinking a lot about water solutions, and I came up with a sort of review of all the different solutions, and I could group them in 4 main categories. And I will try to explain you the logic of what I call the solution framework that I would like us to implement to deal with the climate issues we are facing. The first of these solutions, or this group of solutions, is labeled efficiency solutions. So how do we improve the efficiency in the way we utilize our water? So this is easy to understand if you save water, if you avoid leaks in the pipe systems, but also if you reduce food waste. So Sébastien from Accor explained this. You have an impact on the efficiency of your water usage, and so you can have more for the same amount of water. This is also the engineering approach in which humanity has been very successful in the 20th century. It's not only approach in terms of simply efficiency, but also cost efficiency. How do we optimize basically our systems? The problem with this approach, which is a good one, I don't want to criticize it, but we have observed a number of side effects which we did not anticipate, which one of them is well known as the rebound effect. The rebound effect is if I increase the efficiency of the utilization of something, I will have more money, I will have more, and then I will tend to focus my attention to other possibilities. A very well-known rebound effect is with the cars. The motors of the cars are being more efficient, and the result is that we are getting bigger and bigger cars, and at the end the amount of fuel that is used by the different cars is not changing. So the second pillar is really sufficiency. And here what is very important to understand is that if sufficiency is not just something where you need to restrict yourself. It's always you need to think at the same time efficiency and sufficiency, because each time you gain efficiency, the tendency will be to discover new possibilities to use energy, water, money. And so the two are a bit, for me, the two faces of the same coin, and you always need to think of them at the same time. So, of course, sufficiency for us would be maybe take less bath and more showers, but it can be also reduce the number of chips in our cars, because we know that producing chips uses a lot of water. And in fact, we know that we are using at the moment 100 on average of these chips per car, and the prediction is that 200 of these chips would be used in 2-3 years from now. So we see there are a lot of these phenomena. They are not only our own responsibility, but responsibilities of the whole production and consumption system in which we are. And the third pillar is, I mean, it's a bit like what Charlène explained before. It's resilience. We need to start thinking much more into long-term, not just immediate efficiency. We have seen during the COVID that by focusing on efficiency, we had simplified our supply chains, and we become very vulnerable in case of any disaster, of any problem. So we need to mix again efficiency and resilience, and find the right mix. In the water sector, it means creating a number of buffers, of reservoirs where you store water. It's not necessarily big ones. Even it should be better. It is better if you allocate these small reservoirs in the catchments in a distributed way. But it's also for the resilience, adapting the crops, for instance, that agriculture who use the largest quantities of water to the future climate. So these are three important pillars, and we need to find an optimum. Each time we need to think of the three of these pillars. And then there is a fourth one, which is regenerative and nature. And this is a bit different, and we are just starting to learn how to use much more nature, but I will go a bit more later on this, because it is really where we are at the moment, gaining a lot of knowledge in learning how nature is functioning. I just would like to say that the key point here is infiltrate water everywhere in the landscape, and you will get much better in case of drought and in case of floods or inundations.
Thank you, Daniel. So, very quickly, because we see the timer, Alain-Olivier, what are the main barriers to the adoption of Oneka's solutions?
Yeah, I'll speak on three rapidly, and one of it is, I just mentioned it, is the bad perception of conventional desalination. So we're walking on the path of that industry. So we need to reshift the communications, rebuild the relationship with the communities, and really, making sure that we can communicate that and have these embracing these new way of doing things. The second one is the permitting. Obviously, similarly to the adoptions by the clients, regulators also needs to be convinced of solution like ours to bring like the metrics that redesign eventually the norms and the standards for that industry, but we need to come up with the numbers. So this is on our burden. And the third one is the capital. So there's always that. Our business model is to sell water. So we're currently raising our Series A. Thanks for SWEN Capital as being an investor. The round is still open for the ones interested, but we need to raise significant amount of capital for the project financing piece of the equation and being able to scale that. So how can we bring our impact metrics into impact bonds? And this is our journey, and this is what we want to do. But we think we can raise a significant amount of capital aligning interests and metrics, impact indicators.
Thank you, Alain. And Monica, we're talking about limitations to adoption and the need for capital. What are your solutions to accelerate those solutions?
Thank you. And on replying to that, but also I need to really quickly echo the resilience aspects that Daniel brought, is that to say that when we're looking at investments in climate resilient water infrastructure, we're not just climate proofing those assets, but really trying to see what kind of resilience benefits do they create for the urban water system. Targeting those vulnerable communities and on the watershed, right? Because that's ultimately where water comes from. So definitely along those lines. Now, what are we doing? Basically, I will say that we are doing, together with our sister organization, Water.org, and other strategic allies, we're working on the whole process, because I think regulation is key, right? That changes the business case and will increase the demand for some of those solutions. We already see that happening in the Ganges, for example, in India, where every time a tertiary wastewater treatment plant is built, those industries will not be able anymore to extract groundwater, right? So it was free groundwater, so why would they change unless there is regulation and enforcement? The other part is procurement, and I think there we really think procurement is not strategic, but it's the place where public spending can change the dynamics, and we think we're trying to work to see how utilities can become launching customers of some of those solutions, right? And also nurture the whole ecosystems of local entrepreneurs, because private sector participation in water is a tricky issue, but why if we have private sector locally that can do it, right? And the last bit is also the whole blended finance aspects, and there also it can be all the way from project preparation facilities to guarantees or, of course, concessional products. So what we're doing is we're identifying and leveraging the strengths of our sister NGO and other strategic partners to see what are those high-impact solutions and how do we cultivate them and strengthen them before we can invest, sometimes on the resilience aspects and sometimes on the financial, like piloting performance-based contracts for nature-based wastewater treatment, for example, right? So that's the way. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Danielle, I'm sure you would also have a lot to say on how to finance and accelerate those solutions. But my question for you will be, how can we choose solutions that are good for all stakeholders and for nature?
I will try to be short on this, but of course, a lot could be said. What I would like to stress here is that using water can mean many different things. A farmer is trying to evaporate a lot of water through his plants. An industrial is trying to cool some industrial, at least in the energy sector, try to cool down the water. So in fact, there are three main water users or uses. You either want to evaporate as much as possible, you pump and you pollute water, or you are nature and you need water for ecosystems. And so what is important is that we need to recognize that using the water doesn't mean the same thing to all stakeholders. Even stakeholders come from very different perspectives, and nature needs to be one of these stakeholders. So we see now that progressively this recognition is growing, particularly because nature is coming to the scene, if I may say, and there is a lot that could be done also by giving rights to nature for improving water management. I see time, so I'm...
Yes. So thank you very much for taking care of the time. And it's very good that we conclude like this, because we started with Dr. Kelsey Leonard talking about legal personhoods of bodies of water, and we conclude also with this, saying that we need also to take decisions taking into account all those bodies of water as if they were persons.